Hey guys, it's Adam here. Recently I had the opportunity to be on a Back to the Future podcast called Flux Capaci-cast with Hutchinson and John J. Galbo. They were cool enough to let me re-upload the podcast to my YouTube channel to share it with you guys. Just a small disclaimer, I had to cut out their intro because it contained a lot of music and sound effects and stuff that YouTube would have definitely flagged me over. However, if you want to check out the original version or just check them out in general, I put a link to their website in the description. Highly recommended. Aside from that, thank you guys. I hope you enjoy. See you later.
Good evening, time travelers and future listeners. Another exciting episode of the Flux Capaci-cast is on. I'm John Galbo with Guy Hutchinson.
John Galbo, it is always an exciting time. It is always fun to chat with you.
Yes.
How have you been?
I've been good. How have you been?
This has been, I think this is the closest we've ever been with putting episodes out. We've got 2 in 1 week.
Well, don't...
I'm inspired.
You're ruining the what was it? The magic.
The space-time continuum of our show.
Yeah,
people may think we're just... we're actually traveling through time, and so these episodes...
You could have, held on to this episode for, another week, and we could have been like, hey, we did 2 episodes in 2 weeks.
No way. No, we've got to be topical. God knows what could happen. All kinds of things could happen. We're going to be on the cutting edge.
It's a show about time travel.
We've got a fantastic guest who I'm super excited to talk to. Adam Koralik is on the show with us. Adam, welcome.
Hi. It's glad to be here.
Adam, we were talking on the show a few weeks ago about Back to the Future, the game, which came out from Telltale Games quite a few years ago at this point. I guess 5 years ago?
I think it was the first version, I think was 2011.
Okay, yeah.
And
so
they re-released it last October.
Yeah, in time for, obviously, the Back to the Future Day.
And for those that haven't played it, give a quick summary of it.
I would say it's the closest thing you'll ever see to a true fourth movie. It kind of picks up 6 months after the events of Back to the Future 3 and tries to just kind of show what Marty's going through without Doc being around, and then basically a new storyline to kind of get them back together and have essentially a new romp, as it were. Essentially turning it into a fourth movie, yeah.
It's great. I mean, I loved stuff like it's 1986, and they're doing an estate sale at Doc's garage. You know, his garage in the parking lot of the Burger King. Yep. And Marty has this dream where Doc disappears in the parking lot and everything. And everything about it was, when I first started playing it, 2 minutes in, I was like, whoa, this is some serious stuff. This is not what I thought this was going to be. Somebody put some real thought and effort into this. These are they're well-written stories, and it's pretty big. I actually played all the way through. And you go through, you go to I guess the 1920s where there's Tootsie Trotter.
Yeah, it was, what was it, the early 30s?
Yeah.
It's been a while. But
there's prohibition and, and a weird soup kitchen. Mm-hmm. And it's you really traveled through all these different eras. They got some of the voice cast to return.
That they did. They, who did they get back? They got, obviously Christopher Lloyd came back. In the original version, and there was a couple other side actors, and then when they re-released the game in 2015, they actually got Thomas F. Wilson to come back in and record Biff's lines, because he didn't do that originally in the 2011 release.
Oh, wow. Right. But we also got Claudia Wells came back to do Jennifer. Yeah. So we got the real Jennifer back, my first movie love, Claudia Wells.
I always, that's a side story, but I always thought it was weird that they changed casting. I know why they did, but it always kind of threw me off, even as a kid.
It really not only throws me off, even now when I watch it, it throws me off, but as a kid, it threw me off because she looks different, she's dressed different, her hair's different, and part of me was did Marty come back to it? Is it a different time now? Did something happen that changed Jennifer through the ripples of the time? You know what I mean? Did her parents meet, different people, and that's why this is a different girl?
For sure. And then, of course, eventually Elizabeth Shue kind of blew up for a bit, so then you look back and you're like, well, wait a minute, now we just associate her as being Elizabeth Shue in these movies, and it's off, yeah. So I know exactly what you mean. It's whatever.
It's also off that, she I think she was nominated or won for, Leaving Las Vegas, and so it's there's this fine pedigreed actress, and they're like, let's just throw her in the trash for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, bothers me, like, even now watching it, and it especially bothered me then, I was like, what if somebody comes up and, like, molests her? And then, like, he leaves her on the porch of somebody else's house. He's like, the ripple of time, it doesn't really matter what torture goes on amongst this Jennifer in alternate 1985, as long as we get back to the same time. It's like, well, that's still horrible, Doc.
I think it was what Bob Gale said in one of the commentaries somewhere, that as long as Doc says it, it's just true. So if he says, like, oh, we leave her on the porch, and then when we fix the timeline, she'll be all right. You just go, all right, sure. So, because they painted themselves into a corner by, bringing her into the future at the end of the first one.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I was looking for a video about this game. I wanted to find somebody that had cut together the cut scenes from this game, and I found you had done something better than that. And so I wanted to first find out who you are, talk about your YouTube channel and your productions. Just let's find out who you are. What have you been doing, and what do you do on the internet?
All right, so I run a YouTube channel just simply by my name, Adam Koralik, and I do a lot of video game videos, primarily on like retro gaming. I talk about games, I do product reviews, all that kind of stuff. I actually don't do that much with like what you're referring to with the game footage editing.
Right.
But so if you want to know how I got into those particular videos, a few years ago, or you don't want to do that yet?
Let's do that. But let's first. So I want to know.
Sure.
If people go to your channel, what can they expect? What's the bulk of it?
The bulk of it is basically me in front of a camera talking about the current state of video games, the history of video games, where I think video games are going. A lot of pickups and stuff, reviews, restoration and repair videos on game consoles. A lot of stuff like that, almost like vlogs, but about very specific subjects. It's actually quite ironic. The videos we're talking about or intend to talk about today is few and far between on my channel. Those were like passion projects that I just really wanted to do.
You've got a very popular channel. Looks like you got over 77,000 subscribers.
Yeah, I think I think at the time we record this, I'm about to hit 78,000.
Oh,
probably tonight.
That's quite a bit. I mean, I'm sure it's more than the ACP.
Yeah, I think we got like 12.
Also, in fairness, I just started it back.
Yeah, well, we've actually been kicked off a few times. So
off of YouTube?
Yeah, off of somehow
for unknown reasons.
Well, yeah. I know you had. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe one of your videos you had to re-upload because they flagged it for some kind of.
Yes.
And we had that happen, and we were like, well, whatever.
Yeah,
and they were like, hey, we'll shut
it.
down the whole. Yeah, they sent us a message about it, and then they just shut the whole channel down over some weird music cue, which we don't know what it was. We were going in and out of buildings, so there was music playing and stuff. But
yeah, YouTube's like algorithm for that is pretty evil, but it is what it is.
So Figure It Out Productions.
Yes, that's the name of the company. We've been around since 2009.
Oh wow.
Yeah, originally I did a lot of like indie films and stuff, and I do that a lot, but the channel was originally going to be a place where I just kind of posted them all, and that didn't really work out that well, so I ended up doing, I wanted to use the channel for something, so I just kind of turned it into one of my passions, which is video games. But I have a film school background, and I still do film production, but I just don't do it through YouTube anymore, because it's not lucrative enough.
So what are some videos that you've done that you recommend people want to check it out, want to see, the prime stuff? What's one you say, look this one up?
Well, if you're into just the general topic of discussing video games, I have a series that I call like Video Game Recap, which is all about the history of various video game consoles. If you're into film, I've done a few short films that I put up there, which was kind of like I said, is kind of how I wanted the channel to go originally. There's some comedies, there's a little bit of drama ones up there as well. You can check those out. And then there's these video game to film adaptations, which we will obviously talk about in a bit here. I think that I have the most pride in those video game to game adaptations and the short films. But I love the video game videos I do and the discussions, but that's a very specific niche audience, and I fully recognize that.
So what was the first one of those you did?
Of the video game ones?
Yeah, the video game to film. Like you did the Jurassic Park one prior to
that's
Back to the Future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did exactly 3 of those. Jurassic Park was the first one.
Okay. So that one, I haven't played that game yet. A lot of people said it wasn't as good as the Back to the Future one.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
It depends on how much of a fan you are of those movies.
I'm a giant fan. I will tell you, when I saw Jurassic Park the first time, I said, well, that's my new favorite movie of all time, after Back to the Future had been for years. And then I really love that film series. I love all 4 of those films. I could watch any one of them at any time. I think they're all excellent. But what I've realized is that the emotional qualities of the first Back to the Future film, I find to be more, it resonates with me more once I grew up, than the Jurassic Park films. But, cause I don't have any deep emotional attachment to Jurassic Park. I just think they're the coolest movies in the history of the world to watch.
Yeah, I really like that series, particularly the first one. Yeah, I've always had huge problems with that second movie. But
what's your problems with the second, with the Lost World?
The Lost World. I'm not gonna spend too long on this, but my biggest issue, if there's one moment in that film that to me breaks that movie, it's when, like everyone, I didn't like when they brought the T-Rex back to San Diego, but not for the usual reason of like it's just dumb to have this thing running around. It was the scene in which they're on the pier. And all of a sudden they're like, hang on, we got a problem. And then they're like looking at this, the radar or whatever, and they can see the boat coming, and the boat just smashes into the dock. Sure. And then so you're like, okay, so clearly the boat had a problem, but this problem must have just happened because they were lined up with the exact dock they were supposed to get to, and they were just slightly ahead of schedule. Yes. So you get onto the boat, everyone's dead.
Right.
Okay.
I know exactly where you're going.
How did everyone die?
Yes. Okay. And there's a hand, just a hand, not even a whole body, holding the T-Rex in the pen. My guess is they were like, hey, let's bring a raptor with us.
Yeah, but that's the thing. The only thing you see is the T-Rex. The T-Rex could not have caused that kind of damage.
No, he's in the pen.
Room intact.
Yeah.
He's locked up. There's no explanation. That whole scene, I thought, like, when I saw it as a kid, I'm like, all right, I think I'm just not getting part of this. I was aware that there was something wrong, but I was probably not, I missed it or something. Even as an adult, I still can't figure that scene out.
Maybe the captain was getting a bad signal and he decided, hey, I'm going to go walk into the pen and see if the T-Rex is still here. Let me hold on to the thing.
Yeah. Or the guy who's like holding the button to lock the thing down, he just, I guess, had a heart attack.
Yeah, he died.
There's no reason for him to be there. Yeah.
He's just eating a sausage sandwich and he's Yeah, I mean, it is weird. Yeah, no, but you can do that with the Back to the Future films. So you're blue in the face. I mean, there's the whole picture slowly evaporating, where his brother's feet are still there, but his brother's gone. I don't understand.
I always wondered, in 1985, is he running around without a head? Yeah. What's going on? But those are time travel. You give it a little bit of okay, it's going to have paradoxes.
Sure.
But this is just really, what happened? This is
I don't know.
Significant scene in the movie, and there's no logic to it. I
would love to have somebody ask Steven Spielberg and get an answer, because there should be some reason. I can only imagine he'd just be like, well, I figured what the hell, we'll just put the dinosaurs on there. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It had to be that, right?
I think he just checked out. I've heard the reason that the writing in that movie wasn't particularly good is because, when they did the first film, it was an adaptation from the book. And then when they, when they had, the second book was in production, which,
Michael Crichton wrote
right.
Called The Lost World, but it has nothing to do with that movie.
Yeah, he wrote the second book, I guess, more based on the film version as opposed to his book.
Because the story, I remember reading it when it was released, and it's very different. It's funny, because Guy, you brought up on a recent Drunk about Dodson.
Oh, Dodson.
And he in the book was like the main, instead of Hammond's nephew as the protagonist.
Oh, sure.
It was
Arliss Howard.
It was Dodson.
Wow, that is pretty different.
Well, so this brings us to you playing this game. You play the game, you get done with it. Something inspires you to, hey, this would be cool to watch as a movie?
Sort of. All right, so the company that made that is a company named Telltale Games, and they're the same guys who actually made the Back to the Future game. I think these guys are just really good at basically taking films and narratives and adapting them for video games and giving us new stories. And so when they put out Jurassic Park the game, I was like, oh, I'll bet this will be pretty good. And I played it. I really liked the story. And then the only reason that I decided to start working on a film adaptation of it was that I actually have a second channel that is nothing but video game play footage. And we were going to do a video on that particular game. We do a series called Christopher Walken Through, where we have like a guy who can impersonate celebrity voices. And so the idea was that I would have Jurassic Park footage, we'd cut it all down, and then he would just riff on it as Christopher Walken. This is a real video. You can look it up. Just Christopher Walken Through Jurassic Park. You'll find it. But so I had to capture footage for it regardless. And then I just kept playing it thinking like, I kind of want to just have this footage because I'd love to watch this movie, but not actually play the game all over again. And then I thought, well, you can't really do that because it's like 9 hours of footage when it's all said and done, and that's insane. Right. And of course it includes like load times and just characters standing around while you're trying to figure out the puzzles and all that stuff. And I was like, well, why don't I like shorten it down so I could just watch this for my own entertainment? And then as the film background that I have would not allow me to just have like random jump cuts and all that shit. Sorry. So I just decided, all right, I'm going to whittle this down into what I consider to be a cohesive film. And then as I kept doing that, it eventually got down to 2.5 hours that I thought, all right, this actually works as a pretty solid movie. And then I put it up on YouTube, and it did pretty well. But at one point, as you mentioned earlier, there was like YouTube problems. I got like a strike on it over, not because of the company Telltale. I actually heard from Telltale. They liked the video. They thought it was great. Oh. Yeah. It wasn't from Universal filing any sort of claim. It was from some sound effects company claiming I had stole something, which wow. I was like, all right. It was like jungle noises, like at the beginning of the film. Yeah. And I was like, all right, I'll go find some public domain one. And then I made a couple other changes because I kind of wanted to go all George Lucas on it. And then I went back in and I re-uploaded it, and it's still there to this day.
All right, so now let's talk about this one first before we get to Back to the Future. So Jurassic Park, the movie game that you put up.
Yeah.
How long is it about, and what is the story of that? If we sit down and watch it, what are we looking at?
Sure. It's I called it Jurassic Park 1.5 because honestly I couldn't come up with a better title. Because I didn't want to call it Jurassic Park the game, the movie.
Right.
Like, it just
like I said, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So
sounds horrible.
Movie, the game, the movie.
The final cut of the film is, I believe, 2 hours and 27 minutes, something like that.
Okay, so it's longer, I think, than any of the films, but not astronomical. It's not 6 hours.
I did my best to keep it within reason, and there was a lot of subplots in the game I had to cut out, obviously, to make that possible. Because again, it was 9 hours of raw footage.
Right, but but not to cut you off, but this is the great part about what you did. This is why what you did was so exciting to me, because I want to watch it, but I don't have 6 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I actually went into it kind of with your logic in mind. At one point, I went to YouTube because I wanted to watch it too, but I couldn't find anybody who had done that. All they had done was a lot of the cutscenes kind of put together, which again is about 6 hours as opposed to 9, because 9 would include like character running around and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know. I don't want to watch that either. So that's a large part of the motivator as to why I did it the way I did it. But anyway, the story of the game, Telltale likes to go into previous stories and find like little loose ends and then try to build off of that. So in this case, what they did is, you remember in Jurassic Park, Dennis Nedry, played by Wayne Knight, a.k.a. Newman from Seinfeld, he has that can of shaving cream with the dinosaur embryos in it, and he loses it in the mud there.
Right.
And they felt like that's a story. Like, what happened with that? Well, why did he do all that, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, that's what everybody thought the second film would be about. Mm-hmm. Although they do say that they're only viable for like 48 hours or whatever. They got to get them to the boat in a certain amount of time. But so this takes place shortly after the first film, then.
It takes place during and after the first film.
Awesome.
It's like the first 20 minutes of this movie, if you want to call it a movie, take place during the events of Jurassic Park 1. And it's largely about these other characters who were the contingency plan in case Dennis Nedry failed. and they all kind of come together to retrieve the can and try to basically get it off the island. That's all I'm going to say for now. I think you should watch it. I think if you like Jurassic Park, you'd probably really like it. Not to toot my own horn here, but according to the comments, a lot of people like the story of that film way more than they did the second or third movie, although Jurassic World people liked a lot more.
That's sweet. But I think the good thing for these guys is they have the total hindsight of, looking at what was done wrong and saying, okay, well, here's what we could do. You have the full nostalgia and you have full like rear view mirror to look back and say, okay, let's go back to 1993 and use our hindsight from today and make the perfect story.
Absolutely, and you're not limited to puppets and stuff, because it's all in video games. You can have as many dinosaurs as you want.
Right. So, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So now when you do this, and this question goes for all of the three, two Back to the Future ones you did based on one game, and the Jurassic Park one. Do you storyboard this? How do you decide what you're going to keep and what you're going to cut?
All right. So I wish I could say I had that much planning put into it. No, with the case of Jurassic Park, like I said, I played it through twice and I was just like, this will work. So I just kept going along and cutting it. And then once it was in some sort of presentable state, I was like, okay, this is too long. This doesn't work. That doesn't work. And you just keep whittling it down, until you kind of get what you consider to be some sort of fine cut. And then once that's done, you put the music in. And the problem with that, of course, is you end up watching basically the exact same movie 100 times.
Sure.
Because you have to watch it all the way through to be like, okay, this one line he says at the end of the film, that doesn't quite connect with this part at the beginning, etc. And you gotta find what doesn't work, and like if there's going to be this line I cut now, is that going to have an adverse effect on the story later? It's just a huge pain. And so when I did the first one with Jurassic Park in 2011, I vowed to myself, I will never do this again, ever. This was like the worst thing I ever did in my life. I don't know why.
How long did it take you?
Jurassic Park, maybe 2 or 3 months.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah, it was, and I should not have done it. Like it was absolute hell to get that thing done.
It must have been heartbreaking when it was flagged as well.
Yeah, it absolutely was. But it was okay because I kept all the assets. I was able to go in, just make a couple changes, and then re-upload it. Again, I had consent from Telltale. It's not like I was going to get in that much trouble. It was just some stupid sound effect from some nameless third-party company. So I was like, all right, remove that, and I should be fine. And, knock on wood, I'm still okay as of now. But do you want to jump into Back to the Future now, or do you want to?
I do. But first, John, have you tried this game, the Jurassic Park one?
No, I keep forgetting it's.
I have
a game.
I've got it. I have not put it in. I bought it.
Huh.
I was excited about it. I just haven't, and I've really, I think what happened to me was I just remembered how much time of my life was eaten up by the Back to the Future one. So
it's really true because even the remaster of Back to the Future, and I don't think we've actually talked about this on any of our podcasts, but we have an offshoot of the ACPN Facebook group called The Fringe.
Oh yes, well, no, plug this now. This is
yeah. It's called ACPN Fringe, Friday Night Gaming Events, and once in a blue moon, I'll throw up a game. I think the general consensus enjoys Rocket League now, but like the initial one we did was Back to the Future. And it was myself and Andrew Moores. There's actually some videos in the group for ACPN Fringe where we were just goofing off, and that was really like the only time I played the game so far.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, I was obsessed with it. It was one of those where, I couldn't wait to, wherever I was, I was like, well, as soon as I get home, I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to get back to whatever.
See, that's me with Fallout now.
I bought a Wii for it. I had it on I first got it on my iPhone and it played real sluggish. And then I got it on my computer. I didn't like how it played. And then I heard the Wii interface was really good, which it was when I actually played it on that. So I bought it on that. And then I was up, it was one of those where I was up till 3 a.m. Then I'd get up at 6 and start playing it again.
Because Back to the Future, right?
Yeah. So Adam,
the story in that one, that's kind of what drove me too. Like when it first came out in 2011, I got the PS3 version and I was like, I gotta play this because I saw this trailer they had launched for it and it just blew me away. I was like, I got to play this. This looks like an amazing story because I've always loved that series. So that's really what did it in for me initially.
Well, for me, it was the fact that it wasn't the NES version.
Yes, that helps too.
So yeah, by the way, I mean, here's a series that is one of the greatest film series, is one that lends itself pretty well to video games of any era, and yet they made that terrible game, and then they made the really bad Back to the Future 3 game for the Sega Genesis.
Oh God, with the
where
horse.
You're just on the damn horse. I can never get off that scene with the horse. I've never gotten past it.
Very few have. There's only like 4 levels in that whole game.
Oh, it's bad. But the other one where it's just and you're just sailing through, and there's like guys moving like panes of glass.
Like Bob Gale openly craps on the video games that have been made of Back to the Future. He says the Telltale one is the only one that's worth playing.
Yeah. We also talked about the Commodore 64 one with Rob O'Hara a long time ago.
Oh man, I don't think I ever tried that one.
It was, I don't remember, it was similar to the Telltale game in that it was a point and click game, but obviously, decades before. So here's a question for you before we get into Back to the Future. So you wrap on Jurassic Park. It's a much shorter video than what you did with Back to the Future. Why? What is the difference?
Jurassic Park, I think, like I said, only had about 9 hours of footage, including all of the gameplay. And as I was cutting it, I could tell this was going to be possible to get into just one story. Whereas Back to the Future, I think it was something like 18 hours of gameplay. Maybe not that much. Maybe it was more like 12. I don't remember. It's been a while.
And so you're saying legitimately for a person to play through these games, the Back to the Future game is much longer or harder or what?
The Back to the Future game is a little different from the Jurassic Park game because the Jurassic Park game is basically nothing but cutscenes and QTE sequences, which is basically when you're like the character is standing there and it looks like they're doing some kind of cutscene, but it randomly shows like the letter X on the screen because you want to press X at that exact time. That game does not have sections where you're just walking around as the character.
Oh, I see.
So as a result, it's less footage. And I don't know, it was just easier to whittle that down into like a 2.5 hour story. Whereas Back to the Future was not. It was longer footage to begin with, and just watching it, I could tell even the first 2 acts of the game, you guys might have to help me with the name of the acts because I never got used to that. It's 5 acts, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Well, you said one of them is
Citizen Brown.
Citizen Brown, right? I think that's the 3rd act, right?
That's Act 3, yes.
Yeah, all right. So, there's 5 of them, and I could tell, having played it a few times, that only the first 2 acts were going to work together as, a single film, and then acts 3, 4, and 5 would have to be a second film, because it would take about, I think, 2 hours to play per act, now that I think about it. Okay. This is all kind of coming back to me. It's
sure
like a war story or something, because it was just it was a lot of work that went into that. But we can talk about that.
So the first two, so here you are, you're saying I'll never do this again. I finished this on Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
You play the Back to the Future game.
Mm-hmm.
What is your experience with this film series? I mean, how, you say you like it, but I mean, when did you first see it? How much, how attached are you to these movies and these characters?
All right. So we want to go into my history with Back to the Future. All right. No problem.
We're stalling to fill a full show here.
I will
how it works.
Forever. I do whole videos on nothingness for hours. Don't worry. I can fill plenty of time. So no, my history with Back to the Future is when I was a little kid. I want to say I was maybe 3 or 4. I was in my uncle's house, and somebody put Back to the Future on, and I loved it. I had a sudden obsession with the DeLorean. Even as a little kid, I told my mom, I'm like, I need a DeLorean. She's like, well, then you have to open a bank account. She's like starting to use this as an excuse to try to teach me how money works.
Right.
And I was like, all right, all the Tooth Fairy money, all that stuff, I'm going to put it aside. I'm going to make a DeLorean account. I, no joke, eventually made a bank account for a DeLorean, which obviously I never actually got that car, but it was just I just developed a love for it, and it blew my mind that after I saw the first one, which would have been mid-90s probably.
Yeah. So they're all done by the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're long past done. And at some point we went on to a trip to Universal Studios in Orlando. And so I still loved Back to the Future. And I don't know if they still have it, but the airport there, in Orlando used to have this giant DeLorean just like sticking out of the wall because it was all like,
like a plastic, fiberglass, like part of the store.
There was a Universal Studios themed gift shop. Yeah, there was a Universal Studios themed gift shop at the airport in Orlando.
It
I
was
remember landing there and being like mind blown that this thing that I love is just there for some reason.
Yeah, it's still there, but I think it's been replaced. I think that part has been replaced with Harry Potter, if I remember correctly. But yeah, the DeLorean's not there anymore.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I'm not even talking about the theme park. I'm talking about the
airport. I'm talking the airport, the store that's next to the NASA store across from the Disney store in the middle of MCO. Absolutely.
Yeah. So eventually we went to
spent a lot of time there.
Yeah, that's awesome. We went to the theme park. I got to go on the ride and all that great stuff. And then you come out and you go into that gift shop and you find out that there's Back to the Future 2 and 3. I had no idea. Somehow that information had never been in my, so then I bring those movies back with me and I'm watching them like, this is the greatest story ever told. Like, it's unbelievable. Yeah, I was absolutely in love with it because I just found it, for lack of a better word, I just found the story very interesting. The idea that they could do something in one time frame that would affect another time frame. And it just, I don't know, as a kid, it just unlocked my imagination. I absolutely loved it, which is why when I found out about Telltale's game eventually, I was just like, all right, I'll put everything else aside. When this happens, I'm gone for a few days, So that's what developed it.
So you play it, you decide to make it into its own story. You've got episode 1, which is called It's About Time, which is this is when Marty goes to 1931 to rescue Doc Brown, who's being called Carl Sagan.
Yeah.
And he's in a jail, and there's this whole subplot with Strickland's mom and a shoe, and
no, it's Strickland's sister.
It's Strickland's sister. Okay.
Who for some reason when Andrew and I are playing became Roz from Monsters Inc.
What happened? Tell me.
I don't know. The way she was talking, all of a sudden I'm going, and then Andrew starts chiming in going, Mr. Wazowski, where's your paperwork?
That's a good reference.
There's a video of this.
She stacks newspapers in her house. She's pretty hot back in the 1930s.
Yes.
She hangs out with Doc. Doc gets really into Frankenstein. And then there's episode 2, Get Tannen. So when you played this game, at some point you decide you want to make this into a movie or two.
Sort of.
Yes.
So, all right. As I said, I did that whole Jurassic Park thing, and I vowed I'm absolutely never doing this again. And around the exact same time as when the Back to the Future game came out, I'm like, I'm just going to play this one. I'm not going to do this again. This was absolute hell. And I'm glad I made that decision at the time because that would have been the PS3 version, and recording footage off the PS3 was notoriously difficult, and it didn't end up looking very good, etc. And I just vowed I wouldn't do it. 4 years later, of course, Back to the Future Day is coming up, 2015, October 31st, or October 21st. And they re-release the game for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and an upgraded version for the PC. And that's when they added Thomas F. Wilson into it. And I was just like, oh, I have to do this. Sorry.
That guy, whoever the guy was that had that part originally.
He's still in the game. He just plays all the other Tannins.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. So, wow, interesting. Okay.
I noticed that because I'm like, wait, the voice sounds a little off.
That's pretty cool. So only when it's Biff Tannen.
Yeah, except for one line in Citizen Brown, for some reason they didn't record over him.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think that was just a mistake.
So now, just as a real quick aside, on your video, it's Thomas F. Wilson.
Yes, I have the Thomas F. Wilson version. Yes.
Okay, because when I played it, I would have played it with the other actor.
Yeah. This is quote unquote more authentic, and also visually the game is better because they upgraded a lot of it for a modern game console, so it looks prettier. In addition to having Thomas F. Wilson in it.
Well, anytime you add Thomas F. Wilson, it's going to look prettier.
Ah, yes.
So you take these 5 chapters. Story-wise, you feel that the first and second chapter would make their own movie.
Yes.
And so you start working on that.
I kind of did them in tandem, actually.
Okay.
I did them all together. I basically, I did. God, how many did I do? I'm no joke. I think there was by the end of it, there was 37 different cuts of each film. That's not an exaggeration. And largely that was because, the first thing I did was I captured all the footage. I put it into a very basic timeline. And then I chopped out everything that would have been like a screen where Marty is like making a dialogue selection or load screens, stuff like that. And that compressed the first 2 chapters down to like 3.5 hours or something. And I was just like, okay, I watched it to see if I thought this could work. And then I did the exact same thing with the other 3 chapters, which whittled it down from like 9 hours down to like 4.5 hours or something. Anyway, so I just kept whittling it down, and I did them together just to make sure this project was going to work, because I didn't want to commit to doing the entire 4th one and then find some sort of problem in the 5th one that couldn't be resolved, and therefore I released this 4th movie with a cliffhanger that doesn't ever.
Yeah.
I had to make sure they would both work. And yeah, so ultimately I did that, and I would export these, what I considered to be final versions, and then, the editing software would screw up, like one frame somewhere would drop, and then you'd have to do the entire project over again. It was just sheer hell. It was absolute hell. It took, from the game's release date, which I think was like early October, all the way until the first one got released on December 15th, 2015. I think I finished it the night before.
Wow.
And the second one got released on December 22nd. I think that one got released like 2 days before, or it was done like 2 days before, because there was just so much work to do for those things. It was an absolute nightmare, but ultimately I'm proud of what they turned out to be.
So the first video you did, which covers chapters 1 and 2, is an hour and 47, almost 48 minutes.
Yeah, I just ran up to 148 basically.
And then the second one is 227 because you're covering a third chapter.
That's correct. That one especially was really difficult to trim down because, it's 2.5 hours, which is already pushing the length of what most people will sit through. It's within reason, but each, like I said before, like if you just take the raw gameplay of each chapter, I think it's about 2 hours per. So that you're talking about essentially taking 6 hours and turning it into 2.5. And when you don't have that much, character running around stuff, that's kind of difficult. So it boiled down to a lot of I have to make creative decisions to get things accomplished in the story faster than what the game does. Does that make sense?
Kind of, but I would like you to elaborate a little bit on this, because when I watch the videos, I don't see any cuts in them. Everything flows so smoothly, and I remember, but I remember when I play it, there's stuff, and again, I haven't played it now for several years. But there's stuff like, Marty will have to get the book, and he'll have to get the right book, and he'll have to turn it to the right page, and then he'll, pick it up, and then later you have to remember to use it. And and so when you get to these segments, was there things where you had to kind of bridge a gap between here and here, because during this segment he's doing something that's totally gameplay?
Yes and no. My general rule was you can't ever use the gameplay footage. You just can't, because it has it has HUDs on screen, so it has buttons and things. You can't use it. It breaks.
So you never used it. There was no way for you to.
Yeah, there was no way to use it. So that was my rule going in, because it would break the user's experience. They'd be sucked out of the film if they're like, oh right, this is a video game. So the rule was chop all that out, and whenever you have these 2 sections that have to connect, be creative. Find a way to do it. So sometimes that would result in slightly rearranging things in the original narrative, or dropping entire plot points sometimes. A lot of the video game is, I'll do something for you, but you need to go over here and do these 3 other things, and then when you bring that back to me, we can talk again.
Yes,
so sometimes
that seems to be most point and click.
Exactly.
Games.
So depending on the sequence, my goal would be, well, why can't, when they first meet up, they just kind of do what they're supposed to do. And you could cut out sections of it. Not always. That didn't always work. Sometimes there's too much of a fetch quest. Like there would be, I think it's in the first film, when you have to go find not George, I can't remember his name, his grandfather. Do you remember the name?
No, I don't. But he married Trixie, who I thought was super
him.
hot, but I don't remember his name.
No, I was going to say Marty. That would obviously
the
be
guy who looks like George.
Yes, exactly.
But he totally looks like George.
His grandfather. He has to go find him, so he goes down to the street and then sees that he's up there and everything. And I was just like, this whole sequence is like 3 different environments where you're just kind of going back and forth too much. So I just kind of glued sections together. So like the first time he goes to see Artie, that's it. Yes, thank you. The first time he goes to see Artie, he just tricks him immediately. Nice. And when he sees Biff's grandfather, I can't remember these names. It's like I blacked out of this out. Sorry, say again?
This Kid Tannen.
Yeah, Kid.
This
so
was
you have to
5
understand,
months ago for you.
I saw this thing so many times that once it was done, I never wanted to see it again.
Right.
So like I blacked a lot of it out.
But
yes,
who wants to remember Kid Tannen and Artie?
Yeah.
Arthur McFly.
So he sees Kid Tannen once, and he has an interaction with him where, he gets chased around, and then he has to get the recorder, and then, let's just do one chase, And it was just stuff like that. You're basically just taking different sequences and trying to mesh them together so it's less obvious that this is a video game.
Adam, this is why I liked your videos. This is exactly what it was. Because if you watch the other videos, that's what you get is a lot of this unnecessary stuff that makes you feel like you're not watching a movie. Mm-hmm. And when I watch your stuff, it even starts with like the Universal logo, if I remember correctly.
It does.
And it really feels authentic, like it's what a Back to the Future live, full feature, length animated film would feel like.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that.
And
that was the goal.
It's really good. And I don't know of anybody else that has done this with any game.
Yeah, I couldn't find any other great examples. I mean, there are some, but they were done by actual companies. Like, I don't know if you ever saw or ever played a video game called Shenmue. When they released the second one, they cut together all the footage from the first game to make a movie just in case you bought the second one and you didn't play the first one. But it wasn't that well cut together. But like aside from that, I can't think of any, because it's just such a hassle. And I now know that from a first-hand experience. It's just a massive pain because video games are not really meant to be movies. So when you cut them in a way to try to make them a film, it's extremely difficult.
So tell me, just judging it not on your work, but on the content of the product that they made, that they gave you, and then you had to cut together to make this. Mm-hmm. If you sit down and watch these, are there parts where you're like, wow, I wish this was different. I wish this was, not there just because we could have a better narrative? Or does it really flow for you watching it as something that would feel like a movie if you didn't have anything to do with it?
So you're asking if I could have had them make changes or if I could make changes myself?
Yeah, exactly. Because literally, part of the story they're writing has to do with what's going to be fun to play as well as what's going to be fun to watch. And you're taking the play aspect out of it, making it only something to watch. Mm-hmm. Are there things that you wish were different? Are there things that stand out that, gee, I wish that wasn't in this?
Nothing that specifically comes to mind. Okay. Yes, there's some of that, like, particularly in the second film when, you're in that, the Citizen Brown thing. I always kind of felt like it would have been nice to get to him a little faster. So, because it's basically 3 times you're just doing the same thing. You have to you have to find Einstein, you have to kiss Jennifer, and you have to, find the alcohol. That way you get like 3 demerits or whatever. That way so you're basically doing the same thing 3 times just to get in trouble.
Right.
It's like, okay, after the first one, you kind of got it. So I did my best to consolidate stuff like that so that he kind of did all the offenses like right away. I'm not sure if I was to write a film called Back to the Future 5 that I would have written that particular section, but I basically worked with what I had and I tried to turn it into the most cohesive film possible with that.
Citizen Brown is my favorite part of this entire game.
Mm-hmm.
Citizen Brown, for anybody that hasn't played this, I totally recommend, if you haven't played it, watch these movies or play it. But if you're not, some people don't like to play video games, and watch John's Fringe video.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're going to say?
No, I was going to say what I said earlier. They have adapted it into a comic book.
Ooh. That's that I want to check out. I haven't read any of these comics. I've read the old ones that were done by
the Harvey ones.
Yeah, the ones that were done by the same people that did like the
Archie.
Yeah, but they also did Bill and Ted, I believe. I believe they did the Bill and Ted comic as well. Which may not be true, but if it is, those were both time travel comic books.
Yeah, how did they both end up with weird animated shows, too?
Yeah, exactly. But Back to the Future never got a cereal, so... Because you could eat Bill and Ted's cereal.
Yeah.
Which came with a little phone booth that you could use to store your cereal and take it. I'm not kidding.
No, I believe
it. You could take it to school in your lunchbox, put it in the little container. It was like a little Tupperware, only with Bill and Ted on it. It was shaped like a phone booth. But here's the thing. This story, the Citizen Brown section. So there's multiple sections. That section, Doc runs Hill Valley, and it's this weird, Valley of the Dolls kind of. It's this Minority Report.
Almost Orwellian a little bit.
And Doc is such a jerk.
Yeah.
It's so great that Doc's the villain of this section. Mm-hmm. And he just rules the whole place, and everybody they can't swear, they can't do anything. Jennifer's like a complete punk because she's like super rebellious, and she thinks Marty's a square, which really bugs him.
Yeah.
Which I just found kind of cute. But it was like when I was playing it, I played up to that point, and these games were kind of complex. I remember a couple sequences where I was like, all right, now I got to go on YouTube and figure out how I got to do this. Cause there's one segment, which is during Citizen Brown, where it's like, there's Biff and a couple other henchmen that are working because Biff is working for Doc Brown in this segment, right?
Yeah. He's like trying to sell people to the Citizen Plus program.
And so there's like a thing where you got to like jump over something, and then there's like a crate, and you've got to kick it, and and it was like you had to do like three things in a certain order. It was like total Dragon's Lair kind of nonsense where it's like, I can't, what is the pattern I'm supposed to do? Let me get it done so I can move on and actually enjoy myself. Mm-hmm. But this segment, when I got to this segment, they did like, Marty crashes into the billboard, and you just hear Doc Brown go, "Relax, we've got everything under control." And you see that he runs Hill Valley. And then they did like this real cinematic commercial for it. I was like, that is awesome. I'm up for the rest of the night because I got to figure out how to get the tire over here so Marty can jump on it and get whatever he's got to do. But I'll tell you, if people haven't checked this out, your videos are a great way to do it because not everybody plays video games and not everybody has a system for this or the time. I mean, I had the time then. I don't know that I would have the time today to play this, but it is really cool that you put this together, Adam.
Oh yeah, thank you for watching them. It's funny, the two sections you're talking about I cut out of the film. Like
there's a lot of stuff you cut out. Tell me finish your thought, and then I want to talk about the very end of the game.
Yeah, I get crap for that one a lot, but that's all right. I'll talk about that one too. The part we were talking about with Biff, where you had to do that sequence, I just felt like there was a part right before that where Biff gets like knocked out, and then Marty he thinks he's free to escape, and in the game, Biff basically gets back up, and then they have a traditional kind of conflict scene. And I was just like, you don't need that. Like, he already passed out. The movie's like 3 hours long. This has to go. This isn't necessary. Sure. Plus, it's really hard to cut that because, like you said, you have to do things in a very specific order. And that's not interesting to watch, especially the way it's animated in the game. It's barely
interesting to play.
Exactly. So I was like, let's just go from narrative point to narrative point. And when you're talking about the tire thing, originally I cut that together so that he would actually do that. He'd get in he'd figure out the tire and fly over. But then I realized that whole section took up like maybe good 2 or 3 minutes, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're trying to do that across the entire film to bring it down, I was like, if you cut that out and just have him go over and talk to the little box, and then I just recorded my own voice saying, "Yeah, welcome home," he just gets in. And because I was like, that's just something you have to do to push the story along faster.
This is great. So you've got a cameo in this.
I have a couple of cameos in it. In fact, I had a friend do a cameo in there because it was one thing. All right, I'll tell you an example of a story change that I made because I didn't like the way they did it in the game. So when he first gets into that version of Hill Valley, Marty goes over to the courthouse, and he like pushes the button, and he hears Edna talking to him, and he's like, can I see Citizen Brown? And she's like, no, you need an appointment, whatever. I didn't like that Edna was revealed like that. I figured she would be too important to personally answer this all the time.
Yeah.
So I had a friend record it, because then I figured when you finally see Edna later, because I think when you bring the dog out or whatever, I figured that would have more of an impact on the viewer. Like, wow, reveal. Edna is part of this. Edna's still around. Huh. You have to make it for the person who's never played the games, as opposed to the people who know the games very well.
Right.
So I thought that worked as a better reveal, as opposed to this random audio soundbite. You're like, oh, all right, Edna. That's not a surprise. You know what I'm saying?
And who's your friend? Let's give him a shout out.
My friend's name is Aaron Yonda. If you watch a lot of things on YouTube, you might know him. He works on a channel with me called Game Society Pimps. He also used to make a show called Chad Vader, which was a Star Wars.
I remember.
Yeah, he's like the intern.
Aaron Yonda's. I'm actually in that show.
Funny.
Where he's like at the cafeteria.
I got a funny story.
Yeah, so my friend...
Go ahead, John, tell your story.
Yeah, so I go to... I keep saying I go to. I'm not going this year. I go down to Atlanta to the Dragon Con every year. Mm-hmm. And I used to have a website about Adult Swim stuff. And for a few years, we had a table. And one year, one of the guys from Venture Brothers' band was performing there. So they had a table, and they said, you know what, we're going to put you and some other Adult Swim groups in the main hotel, the Marriott. And they had us like at one side, and then all the way in the corner is Chad Vader on a megaphone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I helped him out.
Yeah, no, that is great. I mean, that's a big deal, that Chad Vader sketch. That really went viral and took off.
Yep. So yeah, he's in the movie for one line.
Right.
He's one of my best
awesome.
friends.
That's fantastic. Good for him. And you are in the movie a couple times. Let's go through all the times you're in it, because I want to look for you.
I'm only in it twice. And it's only the second film. In the second film, like right at the beginning when he goes, Marty walks up, he pushes an intercom system to try and get in. The original line was something like, no, we won't let you in. I just said something like, welcome home, Citizen McFly. And I used modulation on the voice to make it sound like it came through a speaker, stuff like that. And then later, when Marty has kind of semi-escaped the imprisonment and he's in the suit and he wants to help Doc out, he goes over to try and trick that other guard. There was a whole sequence there where it was like impossible to explain why Biff was in prison and like how to get the pill away from him. It just didn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. Unless you played the game, because you'd have to like go back and forth 3 or 4 times to figure out what the deal was. And I was like, that doesn't work for a movie. So since that character had like a mask over his face, I could have him say whatever I wanted. So I just had him flat out say like he's got a pill or something like that and get it back. Or I don't even remember exactly what I said. But those were both me. And those were just examples of, like, the film's too long, I have to change part of the narrative to expedite things. Or my friend being replaced by Edna was just a creative decision because I just didn't like that she was revealed there. I thought that was just like, oh, we have her in the booth, have her say it, as opposed to, like, let's think about how that works as a story.
That's great. Adam, these are the definitive episodes 4 and 5. I mean, this is what I will forever, if I want to watch everything, I will put these in. So you've now secured a place in the Back to the Future, not quadrilogy. What is it when it's 5?
Pentilogy?
Pentilogy?
I don't know. I'm making that up. But thank you. That's
Pentilogy.
Flattering.
That is awesome. I'm super excited about this. So let's get to the end, because when I got to the end of the game, I don't know that I was disappointed by it, but I was kind of like, wow, you guys were really like on the ball the whole time, and now you guys got really like part 2 silly on me here.
Okay, so I guess we do agree on this. Okay.
I think we might. So, but your ending is not the ending of the game.
That is correct. Okay, so there's the ending of the game,
and do total spoilers.
We're going full spoiler. I guess we should have said that a long time ago. But, all right.
Spell it all out.
I really disliked the original ending of the game for a couple of different reasons. One, I thought Kid Tannen and Edna Strickland were basically unforgivable characters. The things they do are atrocious across that timeline, and I didn't feel that they just deserved a corny, happy ending, especially one that I felt really didn't make sense.
So what do they get? What do they get in the real ending?
In the real ending, they end up being a married couple, and, you know, Biff's like her stepson, and they're like happy, and she loves dogs all of a sudden. And it was just like an excuse to like see what happened to those characters.
Yeah, sure, but there is kind of the comeuppance that Doc's like, I banged Biff's wife.
Yeah, but
no, Biff's grandmother's wife.
Yeah, but I didn't like that because even if you accept the original narrative of the story, it means they were together, he broke out, cheated on her, had a son, and then she took him back, which maybe is fitting for them. But I just didn't. I also thought, like, if you look across those timelines, like, they're both like murderers. Like, it was just
they are.
Should still be in prison and
Adam,
stuff.
This is what's great about you. You've actually put a lot more thought into this.
Oh, I put a lot of thought into it, dude.
And that's what's so cool, because you spent so much time on this, because you were working on this like it was a real, you know, an important real thing for you, whereas everybody else playing this as a game, not thinking that deeply into it. I think this is so great.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I mean, I could go way further in depth. Like, I have all sorts of theories about, I don't want to call them my movies because they're not mine, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I have theories about, in timeline A, Edna Strickland was dead. And then timeline B is... all right.
I love this, because you know what? Here's what we got to do.
Yeah.
We have to have you back on after the people listening have watched your videos. Because right now, I assume most people... I would assume almost everybody listening hasn't watched them.
Yeah, that's totally
fair. But I'm hoping that as soon as they turn this off, that's what they do tonight and tomorrow night. But no, go on. So this is the end of the game that we're talking about.
Yes, I will save the timeline theory stuff for later. That's fine. But okay, so the ending of the game, I got rid of that subplot, and also in the actual game, it seems like everything's wrapped up all nice, and then they tried to give you the Back to the Future 1 style ending where there's just suddenly a time machine pops out, but in this case, Marty gets out, and it's older Marty, and he's actually voiced by Michael J. Fox, and I think that's actually really a significant reason why this ending is so insane, because after he gets out, another one shows up, and then a third one shows up, and they're all like squabbling about the insanity of the timeline, and
one of them's blue, right?
It's very silly.
One of the DeLoreans is blue, one of them's black, and then the idea was that, I guess, the timelines got all screwed up and they don't really know what's going on, so younger Marty and Doc get into a time machine and they presumably go off to fix this, I guess. I hated it because I was like, that doesn't make any sense. They've obviously never attempted to resolve this because I think the next game was canceled after the success of Telltale's Walking Dead. They kind of felt there was no reason to go back to the Future.
Oh, wow.
I don't know that to be sure, but at one point I think that was the plan. And then I think when Walking Dead blew up, they just became too big of a developer to go back to this particular game. But anyway, so I'm like, that conclusion will never come, and it doesn't make any sense. It's not intriguing. And really, it felt to me more like, rather than a story decision to have that, like they were really trying to legitimately set something up, they just went, we have Michael J. Fox in the booth today. Have him say whatever you want, and we'll just throw it in there. Because they had him record a few lines for that game, and I felt like after they got that out of him, they're like, let's just try something zany, and then they used it. Well, I don't know that to be true. It's just how it came off, and I just didn't think it worked well as a story.
I will say, Adam, it does fit into the Parthenon of the first film, where they have this ending that is just total silliness, where they're just like, something's got to be done about your kids. Who cares about what we did for the rest of this, this movie, where I'm like, hey, we should never change things. And so this ending of this game is totally that kind of a thing where it's just a gag. It's not. It doesn't have any substance to it. It's silly. It's a punchline at the end of something that you've now put. I mean, I put hours of my life into.
Yeah. The other thing is, I almost learned a lesson from Robert Zemeckis when he said, he kind of regretted ending the first film that way because it screwed up the sequel.
Yeah.
And I kind of went like, first of all, we don't know if they'll ever make another game. But if they do, that option still exists. If you watch at the end of the film, in my particular one, everything seems normal. And then out of nowhere, a DeLorean shows up and you just hear Marty say, you got to come back with me. And it just ends. So you have the option for something zany to happen. And it ends on that kind of joke. But it's a little bit softer and it's not so specific because.
So how does yours ends
Yes.
people don't see the Marty McFly character that Michael J. Fox is voicing.
Correct. What you see is the DeLorean drives around the corner, it hits a trash can, and then it just kind of fades out to black, and you just hear Marty say, Doc, you got to come back with me. And then you just hear the time travel sound effects. That's it.
That ends it, yeah.
Yeah, that ends
Cut
it.
it off.
Because I felt like that was enough to show more stuff can happen, but at the same time, you didn't have to be as zany and specific with it. But I'll tell you another logistical reason I cut it. That whole extra, the footage we've been talking about with Marty and then with Edna and Kid, that's like an additional 10 minutes. So I was like, if you cut that, the film gets down to a practical length. So primarily I cut it for story reasons, as I explained, but that was a very nice bonus, was that cutting all that out made the film a much more normal viewing time.
Well, Adam, I love this. I love what you did here. Here's what I want. Everybody listening, please watch these, and we'll get back together again, all three of us, and then you listening, and we'll talk about this, a few weeks, a month from now, and really get into deeper territory on this, because I'm fascinated with these. To me, I mean, these were so important. Like, watching these, it was just fantastic. So I'm super glad that you did this. I think it's awesome. I think a lot of times people that do a lot of work for things on the internet don't get any credit for it.
I appreciate that.
And so I think it's great. Now, do you have like YouTube ads on the front of these?
Yes, I do. But
you make some money. Is it pathetic?
It's for these, yes, because YouTube kind of rewards what it calls high retention rates. So basically, when people stick throughout the entire thing, and with long videos like this, people are like, I get it, and then they tune out after like 2 minutes. So the two movies combined have maybe made like $20. It's whatever. I didn't do it for the money. I did it for the passion. But it's.
But if we watch it all the way through, it helps, right?
Certainly.
So if we all load it up while we're at work and just leave it on and not listen to it, it also helps?
As long as you're not using ad block, yeah, it helps out.
If we do it every day?
If you want to. That's up to you.
This is it. All right, so everybody, you know what you have to do now. And we have to watch these. So this is, I'm excited about this. I do want to talk to you again. I want John to watch these all the way through.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think these are so great.
I would really enjoy that. And thank you. I also would like to give a quick shout out to the guy who did the cover art for these.
Yeah, I want to know about this, because the cover art I actually have questions about, because your cover art it doesn't look like the Back to the Future posters. Mm-hmm. It's artwork from the game, apparently, but it's unique and original. What was the process that came about to do these?
Basically, I needed artwork. I didn't want to use just standard like screen caps. So in the case of the Back to the Future ones, I went to an artist named Roy Stoyer, who does a lot of artwork for my other channel. He also does a lot of like T-shirt designs and stuff like that. And I was like, hey, I'm doing these Back to the Future things, and I sent him like rough screeners. And I was like, take a look, and if you're interested, draw these up. And he was like, these were great. I'll draw them right up. And that's exactly what happened.
Wow, so he drew those based on the characters in the game.
Yeah, I just gave him free reign to do whatever he wanted. I made a couple of notes, like make sure that it says it's like a new movie, stuff like that. But aside from that, it was all him.
They look really great.
Yeah.
And so go ahead, give all the plugs you have. Let's plug all your stuff and get people out there to look at it and listen to it.
All right. Like I said, my YouTube channel is youtube.com/Adam Koralik. My other channel is youtube.com/GameSocietyPimps. That's the one where you would see like Christopher Walken playing Jurassic Park. We actually also did Morgan Freeman playing Back to the Future, so you can watch that one too.
I'm in. Yeah.
I got all the normal social media stuff. Facebook, Adam Koralik, or Figured Out Productions, the name of the company's Facebook. I have a Patreon now, which I just launched today. Also my name. Twitter, same thing. It's all just my name at all these places.
And your name is Adam, Koralik.
Correct. If you just look up all one word, you'll find it on any of the major social media places.
John Jay, closing thoughts and wrap things up, buddy.
Closing thoughts. It was great to have Adam on board. I'm definitely going to have to check out the videos. I want to see the Jurassic Park one also.
Thank you very much.
I really want to see that one all the way through, because I've watched a little bit of it and I haven't played that game. So that one is more exciting to me even than the Back to the Future one.
Yeah, I like doing them both. The music, though, that was the biggest pain in the ass, because once you have the films all the way done, you have to go in with music. And music, I probably should have mentioned this before.
Yeah.
You can't use any of the music that Universal made for
So what
either
are
of
you
those
using?
Telltale, fortunately, made their own score for both games, which is supposed to sound like them. Even though they had permission from Universal, they didn't use their music.
Oh, wow.
So I was
and
able to...
Did they release it?
I think they released Jurassic Park officially. Someone took all the Back to the Future music out of the PC version and like uploaded it somewhere. So that's where I was able to get that.
So somebody just, like let their game just run, so there was no audio and just.
I think they just kind of took the files from the game itself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's all, you wouldn't think about all these steps. It's insane to try and make something like this.
Yeah, but that's why it doesn't seem choppy at all.
Yeah, that's another film 101 tactic, is you use, when the video's going to be a really sharp change that would probably annoy the viewer, you have to link them together with sound. And that way they kind of start to get used to the next scene before they're seeing it, and then when it switches, they're already in it.
How do you remove the music that's already there?
Well, in this case, it's obviously the game has an option to just turn off all the music. Which,
oh, nice.
Yeah, which actually makes it kind of hard to play, because you'll be playing it and you're like, it's supposed to be an emotional moment or it's supposed to be significant or whatever, but the music doesn't ever happen. So you're just watching characters run around. You know you're supposed to be hearing some exciting theme music, but you're like, I'm not seeing it. So it's just
perfect, though.
Yeah, that you have to remember the in-game cues and try to use them as best as possible when you're actually editing a film. It's hell, absolute hell, but it was. I like the result.
John Jay, why don't you wrap everything up?
Sorry, I didn't.
That's all right.
That's a great topic that I hadn't thought about.
Well, Guy, you should plug some stuff first, no?
Oh, yeah, I got some stuff. I will be at Florida SuperCon this 4th of July weekend, so come out to Miami and hang out with me.
I can't. I don't have money.
Come on and do it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And you can hear me on everything, on like 50 other shows we do.
It's theacpn.com.
That's right. We've got a new Back to the Future already this week, so this is our second one. We've got a new Gilligan's Island this week. Oh. New Drunk on Disney. Lots of stuff.
No new Swimcast.
No.
You'll have to tell me about that Drunk on Disney thing. That sounds interesting.
I'll tell you all about it.
I do a series on this game called Disneyland Adventures.
I love this. The Connect game?
Yeah.
We could talk for hours.
We'll talk. We should just do like an entire podcast on that. We've done a show on that because I can do a Mickey and a Stitch pretty well. So the whole premise of the series is my friend's stuck at Disneyland and I have to torture him as those characters.
That is great.
Yeah.
Those are good ones.
Yeah.
And buy my book, www.sesameplacebook.com. We did very well last year, and the theme park is open again. Sesame Place is open, selling books. But I would love to sell one directly to you, the listener, and I'll sign it for you and throw in a token as well as a park map. I will throw in a sticker and a pin. Ooh. And if you order right now, and I still have one in stock, I believe I do. I know I have like 5 of them. So if you order right now, I'll throw in a thumb drive with some vintage material that you don't even know about. You'll be amazed. So come on, you can't beat that. $20. Go for it.
Do it. What are you waiting for?
All right.
And like I said, theacpn.com is the place you can go to get all your fancy schmancy podcasting stuff done. You can email this podcast and many others at podcasts with an S at theacpn.com. Also call us, leave us a message, 917-818-ACPN. Facebook group, the ACPN Fringe Facebook group, also a community on PS4.
Join it all. You're welcome. Don't think, oh, gee, I don't want to join this. They may say no. We're not going to say no, as long as you're not going to tell us about, unless you tell us about Ray-Bans. We don't need any Ray-Bans.
Oakley sunglasses.
Everybody always wants to sell
what is
sunglasses.
With that?
It's only sunglasses.
I know. Noticed.
No one goes on there and is like, hey, you want to buy some shoes or pants or something?
I am so protective of my Facebook now. Every time someone wants to friend me, it's like,
I know it's sunglasses.
Francisco Colon wants to friend you, and it's like, well, I have no friends mutual friends
Yeah,
with you.
no mutual friends. I always click yes and then wait for the ad.
Oh,
for the,
see, I don't wait. I just look
the
and see
Oakleys to
I
show
look
up.
and see if anyone else I know has friended him, and it's usually you who's friended
It's always
him.
me, yeah. And
And
I
I'm
get
like,
the Oakley request.
aha.
It's always Oakleys. It's only sunglasses.
Only sunglasses. It's always Oakley specifically. Yep, you're right.
The Flux Capaci-cast is brought to you by Oakley sunglasses.
All right. So listen to that, and in 10 weeks we will be on the Back to the Future Minute. So listen
Oh
to
yes,
that.
we will.